Welcome back, everyone. This is Dark Souls 3 and I'm Daz. And that's a leather shield. This is our brave heroine, and this is the high wall of Lothric. This is the first major area in the game. As such, it's a hotspot for low-level PvP, such as it is. Those markings on the ground can be used to summon other players to help you, or if they're purple, to do all sorts of weird things that may or may not be helpful. Well, that was lucky. I actually end up getting a ton of raw gems from drops in this video, and I don't really know why. It's important to destroy as much of the environment as possible. Just on general principle, not because it's useful. Sometimes there's something hidden behind a breakable object, but mostly you just want to see it fly. One aspect of this area is that you will often see completely non-aggressive hollows just sort of wandering around and worshipping the trees. You can kill them if you want, but they are largely harmless and they don't give very many souls, so... These larger soldiers are a step above the others. They wield heavy weapons like great axes and halberds. However, because they don't wear heavy armor, they're fairly easy to stagger out of their attacks and they attack slowly. That said, they're still a threat. This is Soul Arrow, the basic sorcery that we picked up last video. It's got a bit more range and speed than Firewall, but because we don't really have the necessary ring to boost its damage, it does less. Still, it's useful. Less so against the enemies that can sponge a lot of hits, but does not open from this side. That is a message that we'll be seeing an awful lot, because one of the things that sort of characterizes Dark Souls level design is a sort of interconnected area where you double back and open up shortcuts a lot. So you don't necessarily need keys all that much, though you will still find plenty of keys. You will mostly just need to come from doors from the right side to open them. You should always take out crossbow users first if you can. Otherwise, this happens. These hollows are infected with the same sort of dark mass that Iudex Gundyr was. They are very powerful for this stage in the game, and they can prove quite a stumbling block. However, they are very weak to fire. If you light one on fire with a firebomb or pyromancy, they will be stunned for several seconds. Sometimes. However, you don't want one to corner you. The camera in this game, as always, can be a little bit difficult sometimes. I made a mistake there in that I really should have ditched lock on the moment that happened so I could actually see where I was rolling. But it's all for the best. I need to demo death at some point. As in the previous games in the series, when you die, you lose all of the souls currently on your person. In this game, you will also lose your status as a Lord of Cinder, and you will lose your Ember, which means I have less health to work with. Also, all of the summon signs that were previously available have disappeared. To get them again, I will need to re-ember. You can do that in a number of ways. First order of business, though, is usually to get your souls back. Souls are very important. They are the universal currency for just about everything. There are a couple of edge cases where you can get things without souls, but for the most part, you need them. Now, I wanted to try and demo something here that didn't quite work out for me. The Dark Mass monsters are capable of friendly fire. As such, they will usually take out the worshipping hollows, and I was hoping, perhaps foolishly, that it would also take out the crossbow hollow. Regrettably, no such luck. So this puts me in a bit of a bad situation. Fighting the Dark Mass on its own is bad enough, but now it has range support. It's not an impossible encounter, but it does make it a lot more difficult. I tried to get a little cheeky there and hope that since that the monster was clipping through the wall, I could hit him from down there, but in the end, sometimes you just have to be aggressive. And I'm rewarded with a lovely new headpiece for my efforts. You want to kill those guys at least once, because they have scripted drops. The first time you kill them, you will always get a Titanite shard and an ember. And an ember is how you re-attain Lord of Cinder form. They also have the secondary effect of fully healing you upon use. So, if you're excuse me, if you're completely out of Estus flasks, as I am right now, a last-ditch effort in healing yourself with an ember might be in order. It's always risky, because if you do it without healing items, the chance that you'll simply die after anyway is pretty high. But, you know, risk-reward. In that case, it wasn't really worth it, because the bonfire was right there. But I wanted to show it off. For our efforts on the other tower, we did get a longbow. I probably won't be using much of it because we already have plenty of ranged options with our spells. These hollows with the lanterns have a special mechanic. If left alone, they will scream and rouse a bunch of the hollows around them into an aggressive state. Not all of them, but some of them. To that end, it's usually a priority to take them out before they can yell. This dead dragon hides a couple of items. If we ascend the tower fully, first we get ambushed, which is kind of a nasty trick if you're not expecting it. And then we have access to a unique item. The binoculars. The binoculars are actually probably most useful on a magic character. By equipping them to your hotbar and using them, you can enter a first-person mode to get a better view of your surroundings. You can also use it as a sort of makeshift scope for your spells. Bows and crossbows have a built-in zoom-in feature, but if you're a magic user, you have to rely on the binoculars. Now, I was thinking about maybe going for a long-range shot on some of the hollows down there, but actually, the dragon corpse provides surprisingly good cover for them, so we need to get in closer. You can also manually aim spells by using the camera in third person. That's pretty difficult. It's a skill worth mastering, but it's not always necessary. Had we not been quick in defeating the hollow with the lantern, these guys would have jumped up and attacked us. Here I show off the Sorcerer's Staff weapon art, the Steady Champ. A Upon using that, the next couple of spells that you shoot will deal extra damage. It's a useful little buff if you know that you're going to have some uninterrupted casting time. Yes, thank you. That one is actually useful, so I'm going to rate it good. Now, appropriately enough, the item hidden below the dragon is gold pine resin. Gold pine resin is an item that you can apply to your right-hand weapon that will imbue it with lightning damage. And as series veterans will know, lightning damage is extremely effective against dragons and derivative enemies. It's entirely possible that whoever killed the dragon up above used this pine resin to do so. You can quickly descend ladders by holding the B button. And since we're undead, I guess we just don't care about rope burn. The hollows with spears and shields are quite a bit tougher than their other, I guess I would say, compatriots. However, they do have a weakness. By kicking their shields when they have them up, you can stagger them and kill them in one hit with a riposte. Not so easy to deal with is this distressingly alive dragon. He's not all that, because he will take out a number of enemies for us, but that fire will definitely hurt us too. I'm sorry, my allergies are acting up today. What am I saying? They act up every day. At any rate, the dragon poses a challenge. How do we get past without getting roasted? It's a matter of timing, and the timing is fairly tight. Fortunately, the fire is not a one-hit kill, and our Pyromancer starting gear actually has fairly high fire resistance to begin with, so we can take a couple of hits from this before we're really in danger. Even so, it's useful to take a minute and assess the situation and the potential timing. Sprinting like mad also helps. As you can see, we're not quite fast enough. The little embers left on the ground will damage you, so if you get caught like that, it's best to roll the rest of the way. I'm gonna go ahead and take those binoculars off my bar for now, just so I don't accidentally go into first person at a bad time. It's been known to happen. We're reasonably safe from the dragon's rage at this particular vantage point, but now we have another problem, a Lothric knight. The hollow soldiers are fairly humdrum, but these guys are very dangerous. The Lothric knights are aggressive and they love to punish you for stepping back and healing. They can close the distance very quickly. You also get a knight's crossbow for our trouble, which is a unique weapon that can only be obtained from Lothric knights that is imbued with lightning damage, as well as the standard crossbow damage. So if we so chose, it would be a good weapon to take out the dragon up on the tower. However, at this stage in the game, that takes literally forever. Another door that does not open from this side. However, this one we'll be able to deal with a bit sooner. In this tower is a new kind of enemy. This is the Hollow Rogue. They're quite frail, but unlike their other colleagues, unlike other enemies of their various kinds, they're very fast and aggressive, and they can actually backstab you if you let them get the drop on you. They also have a ranged attack and throwing knives. They attack quickly in succession, so they are quite dangerous if you're not giving them the proper respect. The tower on the wall bonfire is extremely helpful, and it serves as a sort of way station for your explorations into this area. Hitting it is extremely important because it saves you the trouble of having to go through the dragon fire again, which at this point can be taxing on your healing resources. Of course, resting at a bonfire does mean that the enemies will respawn, so we have to deal with the rogue and the Lothric Knight again. If you sort of wait a minute and take things slowly, you can actually wait for the Lothric Knight to go away before you deal with the rogue, which I would recommend at this point. Both at once can be very difficult for a low-level character. The best way to deal with Lothric Knights with small shields is to simply be aggressive. They can be staggered reasonably easily. However, you always want to make sure that you leave enough stamina to roll away or block at the end. Otherwise, you will get punished when you run out. Now, before, due to deathly fear of fire, we skipped over the upper part of this area. However, now that we have unlocked the bonfire, I am much more comfortable going back and seeing if we can do something with it. However, that does entail getting past the fire again from the opposite direction. Due to the way that you approach, it's actually a lot more difficult to bait the dragon into breathing fire on the enemies, because you will probably aggro all of the hollows and they will follow you up to the safe spot before the dragon can breathe fire, meaning that you'll have to take care of most of them. If you don't want to mess around with kicking shields, then simply rolling behind the spear guys and stabbing them in the back is a perfectly valid tactic. The hollow soldiers tend to have fairly long recover times on their attacks. The Lothric Knights, however, have no such weakness. They are very quick, which is somewhat disconcerting given that they're wearing all that heavy armor. And so here we are again. This time we need to make a mad dash up the stairs. If you know exactly where to go, there's actually not that much danger in this. You can simply duck under this overhang and into the tower that was inaccessible from the other side. And before we do anything else, we should really open up that shortcut. It's not much of a shortcut, but it does mean that we can have a safer way of accessing this area just in case something bad happens. But this is Dark Souls. Nothing bad would ever happen. See, we even have a chest. Or maybe not. Chests don't do that on their own. Alright. Series veterans will recognize this immediately as a mimic. A very early mimic at that. This is the first chest in the game. Pulling no punches. And even if you see one coming, mimics are extremely dangerous enemies. Especially at this point in the game. So let's try that again and do it properly. The key to fighting mimics safely is to bait out their grab attack, which is fairly easy to recognize. They sort of rear their hands back and make a lunge at you. It has very good tracking, so you need to roll out of the way or you will get munched. However, once you learn that, it's extremely easy to avoid. Unlike his other attacks, which are... they have fairly lengthy hitboxes, and they do a lot of damage, especially that jumping ballerina kick. This mimic in particular has a lot of health, at least in proportion to when you face it in the game. However, it is worth it to come here and fight him. Upon death, the mimic drops a deep battle axe. The battle axe is a new kind of weapon that we will try out shortly, and it also has the deep infusion on it, completely free of charge. The deep infusion is unique. It gives a flat bonus to dark damage. Now, split elemental damage is usually a great deal worse than just pure physical or pure elemental damage, due to the way resistances work in this game. However, because we're at the very beginning and the enemies here simply do not have very many resistances, it's actually probably the most powerful weapon available at this point. And the battle axe is very easy to wield, so most characters can use it. It's a very helpful pickup if you're having trouble at the start of the game, and even if you're not having trouble. The dragon guards a number of goodies, including the club, another new weapon. It's slightly overkill, I think, to guard a wooden club with the overwhelming inferno of dragon fire, but, you know, I didn't make the game. There's 2 items over there, and I want both of them. However, it's very risky. You have to expose yourself for quite a while to get them. And I sort of run into a spot of bad luck here. I seem to take the maximum amount of falling damage and stun frames, so I was sort of in a bad spot. So, skipping ahead to the point where I got those back and I got the other item, which was the soul of a deserted corpse. Not very exciting, you didn't need to see it. Trust me. We are progressing down to the bottom of the tower that houses the bonfire. A door that is locked. And some throwing knives. Throwing knives are useful enough. They don't do a lot of damage, but they're a quick, cheap, ranged option that all characters can take advantage of. You equip them in your hotbar and use them like an Estus flask, or a firebomb. The Mailbreaker is another new weapon that has a special property of being able to pierce shields with its weapon art. However, we don't have enough dexterity to properly wield it. Which I'm not going to shed any tears over. It's not that good. It's not the worst weapon in the game, but it's nothing to write home about. There's a prisoner in there that doesn't look particularly unfriendly, so we should probably talk to them at some point. Unfortunately, we need yet another key. We'll have to return at a later date. The way to progress actually lies in the midpoint of the tower. I'm just making one more sweep to make sure that I haven't missed anything. And to rest at the bonfire because I'm out of Estus and that's not a good place to be. I've also decided to slot in a different spell. In this case, a miracle. Heal Aid. To cast Heal Aid, we need to equip our talisman. Heal Aid, as you might have gathered, is a miracle that slightly heals you upon use. The healing is not particularly impressive, but it comes out fairly quickly for a heal class miracle, and it's better than nothing. At this point in the game, it's a fairly substantial heal. This is the way forward. Another dead dragon being worshipped. And an ambush of sorts. One hollow comes up from the ladder and the other crawls up from over the wall. Which is quite impressive, actually. We can't do that. Whatever happened in Lothric is pretty dire. There's another dark mass monster here who will, helpfully, if callously, take out all of his friends for us. I would say overall that this is a harder encounter than the mass monster on the tower near the beginning, because the arena is slightly inconsistent. You have to worry about falling off in different elevations, but you also have a bit more room to work with, so it's not all bad. Fire, as usual, proves to be the best defense. It does a lot of damage, and it will disable them, sometimes. It's a little inconsistent. With both of those items picked up, we can actually just skip those from now on. This enemy is a returning friend from previous installments, a crystal lizard. Crystal lizards will not fight back unless they're huge and ravenous, and instead will run away. Upon death, they will drop a valuable upgrade material, be it a Titanite scale, an infusion gem, or something else. Either way, you really want to go out of your way to kill them. This is a sort of nasty ambush setup. Fortunately, fireballs will take care of it pretty quickly. These unarmored hollows are very weak, at least defensively. They can still do a lot of damage if you're not careful. We're out of flasks, but we do have Ashen Estus and the Heal Aid Miracle, so I feel comfortable in progressing, at least for now. There are a number of valuable items in this little house complex. Even though they go down in one hit, if you let them get their sort of wild swings off and you get back into a corner, you can take a lot of damage in a short amount of time. The Undead Hunter Charm, which we just picked up, is essentially an item that is thrown to block Estus healing. In previous games it was known as a Lloyd's Talisman. Fake illusory wall messages are rampant at this point in the game's development, so you will often see false messages saying that there is one there, and messages saying that no, that guy's a fucking liar. This is a new type of Lothric Knight, the spear and great shield wielding one. This guy doesn't even manage to get an attack off because we were able to peg him with fireballs as he was approaching. But don't let that color your expectations of how that fight will go in the future. They're very dangerous. All Lothric Knights are. In this case, wanton property destruction has actually served us well. That reveals a hidden path to an area with some valuable items. The green blossom can be consumed to increase your stamina recovery, and this treasure chest, which will not try to kill you, holds the Astora Straight Sword. This weapon is actually extremely powerful, especially for characters that don't want to invest very much in physical stats. It has high base damage, and its scaling is only so-so. It responds well to most infusions. Now, that plunging attack seemed like a good idea at the time. However, it put me in a very bad position. Which is why I would recommend that you don't do that, actually. I thought I would be very cool and get through this unscathed, but I forgot a couple of important things. Such as the fact that there were a lot of enemies before me, and also that this was a fatal fall. So, let's take a moment and regroup, and try again next time. That's a lot of dudes. I've made errors.